Hi, 6th grade. Today we're going to be continuing our work with creating the illusion of space in a two-dimensional drawing. Now we've been working on this all year with having the foreground, middle ground, background and changing line value, but we haven't applied this way too much to one-point perspective. So you can consider this a little bit of a warm-up as we move into that. If you want to jump ahead, there's no shortage of videos on YouTube about one-point perspective and interiors, but I will be making one just for you folks. But we're going to start with just kind of drawing from observation some of the rooms in our house, and later on we can take this outside too. Our objective here is to get a foreground, middle ground, and background, and start to play around with some of the angles and perspective. Okay, so I've set myself up in a place in the house where I can see a really long distance, which is the hallway, and I've got a drawing board. If you don't have a drawing board, you have a couple of options. You can use a big piece of cardboard and a piece of paper, or you could use the journals that we made the other day. Whatever you want to do is fine. If you're working the journals, you want to do some thumbnail sketches, and you could even transfer those to bigger paper if you have it. Don't worry if your paper supply it's not including a lot of big pieces. We can work small during this time as well. So the first thing I'm going to notice is that my angles are kind of all going away from ourselves in like a vanishing point. So the first thing I'm going to notice is what's in my foreground. And so this is, if it's helpful to make a little square and hold something up like this, that's sort of what artists are doing. They're sort of framing it out and cropping what they're seeing. So if I start drawing, the edge of the bed, I'm not going to get so involved in trying to draw the whole thing and then looking and saying, oh, I just shifted my whole perspective over. It's called a viewfinder. And if you I can show you how to make one later. Oh, that's nice, Tavish. Tavish is working on the sketchbook that we made the other day. You want to hold that up? Yes, so he's going to be drawing this scene too with us. So we see a little bit of the bed, and then in relation I see a little bit of the door. Now I'm immediately noticing that this angle going back is where we're going to start playing with perspective. You don't have to get it exact right now. I just want you to sort of begin to play around with the fact that some of these angles are not what our head is thinking about. And I always say this with perspective, but it's difficult to do because what your brain knows about the shapes of things is at total odds with what you're seeing. Thank you for that, Tavish. A lot of boy energy in this house. If I held up my ruler and I lined it up with the edge from my perspective.
But I don't have a ruler. So what do I do?
Just watch. Or maybe you could even use one of your dry erase markers. If I hold this up like there was a piece of glass right there, and I lined it up with my angles, being careful not to point it, but keeping it straight like this, I can line it up and see the bottom of that door is actually an angle back like this. So that's sort of the unmathematical way of beginning to play around with those angles in perspective. And then here's the hallway going back, it's a little bit of a door going out. And even, accomplished artists are going to struggle with the perspective because it's always this sort of battle between your eyes and your brain.
Mom, I don't have much more space left back there as much as you do, so I can't really go as far as you can. Really.
That's okay. Your perspective is going to be different because you're sitting in a different place. So this is the baseboard on the stairs. And I'm noticing that some of these angles are sort of similar. There's a filing cabinet out there. And the nice thing about doing this is that even all the tricks that your eyes are playing on you, and even if we get our angles wrong, even if all of this doesn't really look like an accurate drawing, we're really, really making some connections between the hemispheres of our brains just by trying to observe and record this down on the paper. So, like, I guess you could say the struggle is making you smarter. So don't worry about the finished product.
But my perspective is wrong.
Well, I was just saying, Tavish, that if your perspective isn't quite accurate, that's okay, because we're just starting to explore. I'm not looking for perfect one-point perspective drawings right now. I'm looking for an exploration of those angles. Let's look at it from a different way. All right, Tavish, I'm going to need you to hold this up.
Okay.
Can you hold this up for me, please? Okay. Sit on the side over here. Okay. Right. So if we were back at school, I actually have some plastic, some heavy plastic, that we would take out into the hallways and start searching for those vanishing points. But when I was talking about taking a ruler and measuring some of those angles sort of just by holding them against like it was a glass pane, this is what I'm talking about. If I was going to copy over that door, then I'm seeing that this is at this angle at the bottom of the door. And the hallway, if I traced over it, hold it steady, honey. All of these lines in the floorboards are all going back to this imaginary vanishing point back there. So this gives us a little bit of a sense that we know, intellectually we know, that those lines are parallel to one another. But in our drawing, they start to come together. And it's just because things gradually start looking smaller. And that happens in terms of geometric things too. They very gradually recede in space. So the floorboards at the end of the hallway look a lot thinner than they do when they're close to us. So it's that beginning of perspective that we're just noticing right now. It doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. And you can do this too if you have some plastic wrap or saran wrap, or if you ever have a piece of plastic that is coming in a package of something and you were just going to throw it away anyway, you could use a regular marker. But even on a piece of glass with a window marker, make sure it's a window marker, you could do something like this. Really make sure it's washable first. This is just a piece of plexiglass we had in the basement. And don't worry if you don't have any of those materials. Hopefully just watching it gives you a little bit of sense of this kind of going back into space. Well, let's go back to our drawing. Okay. Again, we're looking at this viewpoint here. This is the door frame here. So notice too when I'm drawing that I'm sort of searching for these lines out. I'm using a Conti crayon, which is like a compressed chalk, but you could totally do this with a crayon, pencil, any
yeah,
kind
like
of
what
writing instrument.
pencil is what I'm using. Okay, I'll do that. I do the same views.
Oh, that's a good view, Tavish. I would like to have something in my foreground a little bit more. Would you go and sit? Thank you for sharing that. Okay, would you go and sit? No, I want to put you in my drawing. Go ahead, go and sit there. So, this is where we want to... Well, sit down, hon. Thank you. So I could put his head in here because he's in my foreground. Tavish, please don't move it.
Open it?
No. Just putting your head in there. Okay, why don't you step aside a little bit. Now what we were working on at school was our foreground, middle ground, and background by using changing line value.
I lost my picture. Where's my picture?
Probably on the first page you were drawing on. And this is where we're going to come in, and right now we see that there's a lot going on, but we don't have as much sense of the space as we will in a line drawing if we do what? That's right, if we make the line value darker in the front. Now, we were just working on still life stuff at school, but feel free to use some of the gesture drawing that we were doing in 5th grade and add people in your house, pets, into your drawing. Now, just by making the line value of the things that are close.
This is my view.
Oh, you drew yourself in there. That's lovely, hon.
That's because I'm a bad boy. I'm coloring just one little thing. I'm just coloring.
And notice what a difference that makes as I start to change those line values. The things in the front really do come to the front. And this is all about creating this illusion. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. Don't worry about the end product of your drawing or what it looks like. It's the process here that's really important. The more you do this, the more that you find that reconciliation between what you see and what you know. And even from a figurative standpoint, having different perspectives on things is an important part of the process of being a human.
Hey, okay. I drew this because that's in my view.
You know, Tavish, that's funny that you said that, because what we would have done in the classroom is after we had drawn this scene and copied it onto the plastic, then we would have been able to go and do a drawing from it. Sometimes we don't believe, like looking down in the hallway, if I looked at that picture frame. Now, I know that picture frame, I know that it's a rectangle. But I'm not seeing it as a rectangle right now. So there's lots of ways that we could go about doing this and seeing those perspectives. If you have the means to print out a picture of an interior in your room, like or in your house, taking a picture and printing it out, you can really trace over the lines and see this. But if you're like me, you probably don't have a lot of ink in your printer right now, if you even have one going. So sometimes just if you have a couple people holding up plastic wrap and doing it. Thank you, honey. Put that aside now. With it, I really want you not to focus on the product right here, but just on exploring. We also don't have to stay in the house. Okay, so even out here, we want to notice the places where what we're seeing and what we know are going to be a little bit different. For example, in the flower pots, we know that they're a circle, but when we look at them here, it's more of an oval, like it's an ellipse or stretch out circle shape. And it's going to change as we go back. I can barely see into the pots that are further away, whereas we can see a little bit more up here. If you have any architectural structures around outside, include them too and start to play around with all the angles. So again, I'm going to look for my foreground, middle, and background.
gosh, you guys, I had to film that so many times. The first time I went out, the battery died halfway through the drawing. Charged the battery, did it again. There was a garbage truck where they like parked and just started like shouting at me for half of it. And then I filmed it again and hadn't turned off the wind reduction. Then I did it again and you couldn't see what I was doing, and just went out and hopefully got not the most fantastic drawing, but as I keep pointing out to you, it's the process. And I'll tell you, sitting out there with a little bit of vitamin D and drawing was by far the most pleasant part of my day. And I hope you being able to go around and do some drawings is a really pleasant part of your days too. Hang in there, guys.